Hello, hello, hello. I'm deciding to do a real quick writing tips video. Sometimes these run really long because I'm talkative, but I want to make this one fairly quick, as much as I can, because I actually don't have a whole lot to say on each topic. But if you couldn't tell from the title, this is 10 sources of inspiration for writing, and coming up with ideas for fiction, non-fiction, things that blur the line between the two, and as most fiction does. And we'll just get started with number 10. Mythology. Ancient mythology. Greek mythology, Sumerian, whatever. You can do what everybody in the world does and steal from the Greeks, steal from the Romans, and use their gods, use their stories, like the Minotaur, like Hercules, like Gilgamesh, all that stuff. Prime source of material. I personally do not know a bunch about mythology. It's the kind of thing where I feel like I research it a lot, but I'm so bad with names that I can't retell any of it because I can remember the plots, I can't remember the characters. I know, I'm shit. But anyways, mythology. Look into it, read over it. Some of it's crazy, and it's tough to use in a literal way because it involves, like, gods taking the forms of animals and having sex with people. And it's sort of difficult to incorporate into a modern work without making it really awkward. But it's possible if you're really hard up for inspiration. So, that's number 10, mythology. Us starting off great, aren't we? Number 9, history. Related to this, history, mythology, and legends all sort of blend depending on where you grow up and what kind of histories you hear. And the famous quote, I think it's by Stalin, it's, history is a wonderful thing, like, too bad none of it's true, or something like that. I probably butchered it because history's not true. This fucking video. Anyways, yes, I'm gonna just tear this page out. That would be number 9, history. I would, in a way, caution against this, because, well, I wouldn't caution against it, but you have to be careful, because the version of history that you learned might be wrong, it might be controversial, it might be slanted, basically. Like I said, depending on where you live, what kind of books you read growing up, what kind of schools you went to. But, draw from all of it, bring it into fiction, investigate how plausible this account of it is, investigate what you would have done. Hindsight's 20/20, so it'd be easy to just avert a whole crisis, write a story about just killing Hitler as a baby, but those stories don't always go anywhere if your goal in writing historical fiction is to just prevent bad things from happening, and then imagine, wouldn't it be nice if everything had been peaceful? Those don't usually make for great stories. But investigate controversies, I suppose. Clashing versions of history. I remember there is and this is going to sound like a weird reference, but there's a Airbender episode. I haven't seen a lot of that show, but there's one episode that's basically about two tribes who both have a verbal history of why they hate the other tribe, and both histories are different, and both histories blame the other tribe for, the conflict, the feud. And then, the goal of the main characters basically is to figure out the truth, which is somewhere in between, and the truth is actually, it basically calms the situation because people understand that they didn't know the real history, that they knew this very slanted version of it. So, investigating history, whether it's well known, whether it's obscure, whether it's contested, whether it's kind of confirmed, set in stone, have fun with that. Draw from that. That's number 9. I said a bit about these first 2 topics, but I have almost nothing to say about this next one, number 8, pop culture. And the reason I have almost nothing to say about this is because you are saturated from birth in pop culture, in popular archetypes, in popular plot lines, in certain stock characters and symbols that always mean the same thing, and scenes that just get repeated over and over again. When you're outlining or just typing up a first draft and just sort of going with it with a story, you are flooding your story with pop culture just as a matter of telling a story as a member of a culture where media is everywhere. So don't worry too much about going out of your way to draw from pop culture unless you're doing a parody, unless you're doing a fan work like fan fiction or a sequel, an official sequel or an unofficial sequel. It's weird why we put, why having a new author do a sequel for a studio based on a franchise is something we're kind of fine with, but having a new author do a sequel just for fun, for the community, oh, that's dumb. That's... Who needs that? Anyways, I don't read a lot of fan fiction and fan work, but I have read good fan work. And, like I said, so much official stuff is fan work, so fuck that distinction. It's meaningless. Anyways, you'll draw enough from pop culture whether you mean to or not, so I guess that's the nothing I have to say about that. I have so much more to say about everything than I realize. I'm just talkative as hell. Okay, number 7. Oh yeah, I should have explained the way I'm ordering this list, if you couldn't tell already. I'm basically positioning the least personal sources of inspiration near the top, like mythology, because most of us have almost no personal connection to mythology, and then, history of our culture and our community, that's a little more personal. Our pop culture of the last 30, 50, 100 years, whatever you want to say. Although, influence goes back 400, 500, 2,000 years. Our influences, I mean. But anyways, continuing on with more and more personal sources of inspiration. Recent news. And due to the way news is set up in a place like America, this can be incredibly slanted if you try to get sources of inspiration from the news, because that's the job of some news organizations, is to align all new information within existing ways of understanding things and within existing paradigms. And sometimes they really warp the hell out of stories in trying to do that. Whatever their reason for doing it is. So, draw from recent news, but draw from, like history, draw from a lot of different sources. Get multiple perspectives to inform your story about some kind of recent event. Because you'll want characters who have those multiple perspectives. If all of your characters have the same perspective, there's not going to be enough conflict. It's not going to feel realistic, because even within groups that are trying to achieve the same goal, some charitable goal or some like pro-business goal, they disagree about why they're doing what they're doing and how to best do what they're doing. So get multiple perspectives to inform what your story is about, and that'll help fill in some of the necessary characters. Don't give everybody a character. Part of what you have to do as a storyteller is condense basically a handful of views into one person to kind of represent different groups. And that can be fraught with problems, but if you want to represent different ideologies, that's basically how you have to do it, unless you put fake polls, like fake opinion polls within your story, or I don't know. I'm not going to get into all of that. But recent news and recent history can be another source of inspiration. And you're not going to be worse off for knowing what's going on in the world. Whether or not you use what you learn in a story, you're going to use it. Part of just being alive in a country where you can speak about things is paying attention to what's going on and speaking about it. So draw from the news and put your opinions into your fiction, but not too much. You're still trying to entertain people after all. Alright. Next on the list, number 6. I think this is more personal than politics, but some might disagree. Family stories, family legends, stories about your grandparents, or that, your grandparents told you about your great-grandparents, stuff like that. Preserving your family's tradition within, like, historical fiction, or just using the story as a funny anecdote that you're going to retell in space, or something like that. You can do that. That can work. So, even if you're doing like horror or romance, bring in those bits of family tradition that's the kind of thing that like your parents always tell at parties and stuff. Like, it's just that story that they can't get enough of telling, and you've heard it a million times. Other people haven't heard it a million times, and you can make it a little more interesting here and there if you've heard it so many times that you're bored by it. Make it interesting to yourself again, and then it'll be super interesting to the audience because they've never heard it. Plus, like I said, preserve your family's tradition. Some cultures have more emphasis on that than others. In America, we're pretty much like, whatever was done 40 years ago is bullshit, we don't care. But, some people are very, very much for preserving ancestral tales and stuff. So, do that. Go nuts. You don't have to make it super obvious, even. And people just think they'll just think it's interesting, probably, if you handle it well. So that's number 6. Number 5, which I sort of touched on earlier, but not quite. I skirted near it. You're probably going to guess. It's religious themes. And, yeah, this falls in somewhere between mythology and... yeah, religious themes. So, the one thing I ask, if you're doing a story about religious themes, bring in demons, bring in angels, bring in genies, bring in gods of all sorts, whatever. Just please do not make angels and demons speak in Latin. That does not make sense. It doesn't make sense. They should speak Hebrew if they speak anything at all. maybe that's not what the language is called. Maybe I'm a fucking moron. But anyways, they should not, like, Yiddish? I think Yiddish is a modern, I don't know, I'm stupid. But I know that they shouldn't be speaking fucking Latin. That shit does not make sense. Not all angels are Catholic. I don't know what the fuck, like, this orthodoxy is, please. No Latin angels. Like, you know what I mean. Anyways, moving on. Sufficiently embarrassed myself with that topic, as I knew I would. Number 4, dreams. Personal dreams. You can... I think this is more sort of personal than religion. Because religion, it's personal, like people take it personally, but it's very much this external, societal thing. That's why I almost put it up near mythology and history. But because people have sort of more emotional attachment to religious ideas, because they involve death and family members and stuff like that, I put it higher up on the list. On my personal list, it's way low, but for you, it might be higher up. But moving on, number 4, dreams. Dreams can be fraught with problems, because dreams are not by nature, they're not by nature things that fit the traditional sort of male pleasure-focused story arc where it's just go for the goal, go for the goal, go for the goal, goal done, sleep. And, you know, a lot of stories, a lot of books, a lot of movies, a lot of music follows that paradigm of just run for the goal and then you're finished. But dreams do not follow that. Dreams are much more like just things you're worried about and trying to, like, interpret a bunch of things you've learned recently. And, you know I dream about things that I have to study a lot, like this software Max MSP. I have, like, dreams about it. I used to have, like, nightmares about music theory. It makes no sense, but that's kind of the problem with using dreams as a source of inspiration, is there's no way I can make a story about the nightmares I had about music theory, because they're not, like, they didn't have characters. It was just my brain freaking out trying to understand all of these arcane concepts and how many half steps everything is away from C and stuff like that. And, or, you know, your key, basically. Anyways, I would have, sometimes you just dream about things that aren't narratives. So, getting characters from dreams, getting brief situations from dreams, and then building coherent things outside of that explain, the going into the dream situation and examine the consequences of that dream situation, that's great. But if you're just like, the kind of thing that you would just tell somebody, like, oh, hey, I had a really trippy dream where we were in a helicopter, and then, like, you guys were yelling, and then suddenly, like, you just messed up and, like, aimed us straight for the ground, and then I screamed, and then we crashed, and then I woke up, and then that's my story. It's like, okay, that's, like, stuff happened, it had an arc, you died, but, like, that's not really a story. It's only, it's an event, and it's sort of sad, but it's, you really have to expand upon it. You can use it. That's a real dream I had, and I actually told the person who crashed the helicopter about the dream I had. They crashed the helicopter in my dream, and now we kind of joke about it. But anyways, like, I couldn't really use that as the basis of a story unless I were to do a whole bunch of research about, like, survivalism and, like, helicopters and surviving crashes, and I'd have to do work outside of just describing the dream. The dream is usually not enough. But, you can get creative. Sometimes we're actually more creative during the day when we're just wide awake, well rested, well fed, than when we're like in a drunken stupor in a dream or something like that. Sometimes you get weird ideas in weird states of mind, but you almost always have to build upon them. Just go in chipper in the morning and work at it. So, that's dreams. It can be fraught with problems. And what you end up with might be really surreal, to say the least. So, be careful using dreams as a source of inspiration. Moving up on the list, this isn't quite as short of a video as I anticipated, but I didn't want it to be an hour long, so I guess I'm getting somewhere with that. Number 3, life's goals. You can write stories about the things you want to do when you grow up, or the things you think you would have rather done as a young adult, if you're older writing stories. Or, things you think you would have done just before your divorce, or something like that. Personal, well, now I'm kind of starting to blend my final topics, but I knew they would blend. Life's goals, life's just hypotheticals, daydreams, that kind of stuff you want to do or wish you had done, basically. And these, in a way, say the most about you, but these things change so often for everyone that they only say so much about you. I know my personal life goals change all the time, depending on the season, my recent experience, recent setbacks, recent feedback, positive or negative. What I think I can do with my life changes all the time. So, that I think each decision says something about me, and all together they say something about me, but any one by itself, isn't enough for a full character. Life's goals, yeah, they only say so much about you and about a character. So, use them as a source of inspiration, but you're still going to need to expand upon it. Like if you have a dream of working at some job and you're going to have a character at that job, doing the job based on the research you've done of what that job is, don't make it just about that, because that's not going to be enough. Make it about some drama in the office, or some relationship, or some struggle with the boss, or some kind of union strike or something. Make it about more than just doing the job on a normal day-to-day basis. Make it about the safety hazards of the job, stuff like that. That's where story material is really going to come from. Not so much just a day in the life of the different things that you think you want to do. I think I got through that topic. I don't know. Number 2, personal speech. And by personal speech, and I'm separating this from thoughts in a way, because by personal speech, number 2 on this list, I mean that the kind of things you say in a speech, in a performance, at a party, when you're trying to impress people, when you're trying to be the best version of yourself, is different from what you normally think necessarily. A lot of people try to be, they try to soften their edges for the public. And, the versions they present of themselves, the versions we all present of ourselves, are usually better than what we really are. They represent what we um, what we try to be in a lot of ways, and what we are some of the time. But our personal speeches are a performance. You know, so you can use like eavesdropping basically, and you can use like the things that you say to your friends and the jokes you say to your friends and stuff, but it's not going to have the full depth of a story. And I run into this problem all the time. And I've only sort of recently realized that putting in my kind of like party personality where I'm trying to make jokes all the time and stuff, that putting that into a story isn't the same thing as putting like my full personal self into a story. And just trying to be entertaining is not always being intimate and being personal. So the entertaining like joke stuff that you think of, the stuff that you run to your computer and post online and everybody likes, that kind of stuff can easily be worked into a lot of your stories, especially, if you get that instant feedback, people are like, yeah, that line, that thought, that's great, Then if you can find a context for it, or if you can build a context around it, then go ahead, use that. But it by itself is not going to be enough, For some readers, I should say, because I can just read that kind of stuff all day. But I'm dumb, so what do I know about literature? But anyways, use that stuff, use the stuff people say, use the stuff you say, but investigate it further. Investigate why they're saying it, what they're trying to accomplish by saying what they're saying, Just the other day, I was waiting for a class, forced to listen to these two writers talk about like their tutoring work, basically. And they were speaking loud enough for everyone to hear, but saying like, oh, I don't want to talk about it. Really? I want to know, but I shouldn't pry. Oh, it's kind of personal. Oh, if you insist, I guess I'll tell you, because I'm interesting and writers are listening. I had some involvement with one of my students. It was such a performance, like in every way. It was just improv theater that was really bad and like painful to listen to, and I just had to endure it because class hadn't started yet. And it was one of those things that really solidified in the past couple days based on some terrible reviews of a story I got, and also based on just having to endure this, that so much of speech is a performance. It's not as immediate as we sometimes think. Sometimes it is. People just blurt stuff out. But a lot of stuff people like compile and kind of write in their head and then say it. They're like, does this make sense? Can I put this in? Does this still fit the context of what people are talking about? Oh, okay, I'll throw it out there. It didn't make sense, fuck. But they still try to, that's what I do. But they still try to generally arrange their thoughts. It's not quite as intimate as it seems. So use that as a source for inspiration. Use that in stories, but delve deeper into the people. Delve into why they feel the need to perform with the things they're saying and the things they're talking about with, oh, my tutoring, and oh, my romantic relationships, and yeah, those people. But number one, and number one is a tie for personal thoughts and personal actions. And I kept switching them, number one, number two, because in reality, your actions say more about you than anything you think. To reality, what you think is almost irrelevant. It's what you do that matters. But to yourself, when you're writing, your thoughts feel like the thing that is most personal, is what matters most, is what most defines you. So sometimes, some people are just like, thoughts, 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 thoughts. They just pour them out. And they would almost think that, or, sometimes even I myself think that opinions are kind of more personal than actions, but then sometimes I'm the other way. So, but anyways, both say an enormous amount about you, especially when presented together, because some of the best moments in stories are when characters show or say that they think one way about themselves and then immediately do something contrary to that personal opinion of themselves. I'm a good person, but I'm just going to steal this because, they have a lot of money, I'm going to steal it. Or the notorious, I'm not racist, but says something racist. I don't hate women, but says something against women. The gap between the way people see themselves and what they actually do is tremendously interesting. It's probably one of the best sources for inspiration, for characters, for even kind of cartoonish archetypes. And if you're honest enough to present your own gap in personal philosophy and self-opinion versus the things you actually end up doing in reality, you think of yourself as somebody that would help someone if they were ever in need, but you just pass up every homeless person asking for change like you don't see them, that's something that says something about you. And that's the kind of thing that if you were to put in a story, people would be like, oh, yeah, that's me too, but, So, and that's why, we often don't admit to stuff like that, because it's embarrassing to have an opinion of yourself that's so contrary to the day-to-day reality, your day-to-day actions. So, I will run back down the list, back through the list very quickly, because it's a long video, and you might be sitting there with your pen like, when is this motherfucker going to finish talking so I can start writing, because I have a bunch of ideas based on all the shit he says when he rambles away. So, going back through the list, number 10, mythology, Greek, or sort of your country's own legends and mythology, Paul Bunyan, all that stuff. 9, history, real or contested, or I should say uncontested or contested. 8, pop culture, stuff you like, stuff you hate, stuff that you think could be better, whatever. Number 7, recent news, recent politics, recent debates about that kind of stuff. Number 6, family stories, family legends, ancestral tales, all of that. Number 5, religious themes, religious mythology, parody of religion, investigation of religion, use of religious characters for comedy or philosophy or whatever you want to do. Number 4, dreams in the literal sense of stuff you thought up asleep or in some kind of altered state of mind, but that stuff is usually not enough on its own. Add to it unless you're just painting a picture or something. Literally, here's a image from a dream I had. Whoa, that's weird. Cool. That works in painting. Not so much in stories. Number 3, life's goals, personal ambitions, hypotheticals, the what ifs of life. What if I had done this? What if I do this in the future? All of that. Number 2, personal speech, personal performance, your best version of yourself, your most witty version of yourself when you can actually pronounce words correctly. All of that. All of that. Personal tics. I guess I should add to that the stuff you say all the time, like how, since I am from California almost through and through, I say like all the motherfucking time, and that's just part of my voice, and I have to kind of go through my writing and take it out here and there because I say it too much. Just naturally, I say it too much. Yeah. Build on your personal self, or I should say your presented self, or other people's presented self. Don't just take it for face value. And number 1, tied for number 1, personal actions and personal thoughts. And the gap between them. What people think of themselves and what they do. What you think of yourself and what you do. What you think you want to do and then what you end up not doing. All of that. All of that. How many fucking times am I going to say all of that in this video? I can't stop myself. I can't. So, I'm officially sick of my own voice, and you probably are too. So, farewell. Good luck writing.